So this is chapter 10, microbes and human welfare. Okay, right. Where do you find the microbe? What's the habitat of the microbe? What's the meaning of habitat? Habitat means the place where microbes live. Okay, you can find them everywhere. You can find them living in the soil. You find them in the water. They are in the air and inside the body, like in the mouth, in the intestine. You can find them deep down in the soil, even in the snow. You know, some of the soils are acidic, the pH is acidic. Even in acidic pH, they can survive. Normal living things don't survive. What are geysers? Geysers are, thermal thermal aqueducts, means from where hot water keeps coming out. And here the temperature is 100 degrees. There you find bacteria. Okay, they call this bacteria archaea, but in this extreme conditions, they can live. Archaea is a type of bacteria. So this is the habitat of bacteria. They live everywhere. And we can grow the bacteria in the laboratory. And how do you grow? To grow the bacteria, like any other organisms, you have to provide the right conditions. So they use something like an agar plate. Agar, obtained from algae, plus they put nutrients required for every bacteria has a specific set of nutrients. Add the nutrients. What you see here are colonies of bacteria. These are colonies of the bacteria. And in this picture, you can see the bacteria are different because of the color, right? That makes them different. But look at the second petri dish. This is a colony of fungus known as penicillium, right? Penicillium is a fungus, and this fungus produces an antibiotic known as penicillin, right? We can grow the microbes, maybe fungus or bacteria in artificial conditions, and mostly the optimum temperature is like between 25 and 30 degrees. Okay, that's the optimum temperature. So if you provide the nutrients and provide optimal temperature, you can grow fungus and bacteria, the two microbes we will be studying in this chapter in the laboratory. Okay, so this is called culturing of microbes. All right. And in our daily life, in our house, there are many products which are a result of action by the microorganisms. Okay, the first one is yogurt. Okay, or we commonly call it in India curd. And curd is basically made from milk, right? Yeah, you have to, pasteurize the milk. Means boil the milk to kill the bacteria, harmful bacteria. Means all kinds of bacteria. Then you cool it down to room temperature and you add a spoonful of yogurt. Remember, yogurt means the same as the curd. What do you find in the yogurt? You find the bacteria. This is called lactobacillus. Okay, this is called lactobacillus. This bacteria is commonly known as LAB. The short form LAB stands for lactic acid bacteria. That's the genus name of bacteria, lactobacillus. What's LAB stands for? Lactic acid bacteria is known as LAB, right? So what do you find in the yogurt or the curd? One spoonful of curd has trillions of this lactic acid bacteria. And a small amount of curd is added to the fresh milk. And we call this an inoculum. Inoculum. You're inoculating, means starting a culture. And when you add the bacteria to this, what the bacteria does? Bacteria does respiration and produces lactic acid. That's the reason they call it lactic acid bacteria. Lactic acid causes coagulation of the milk. You know what's coagulation? When the proteins get denatured. Okay, milk contains protein. These proteins are denatured by the excess amount of lactic acid released by the bacteria you added to the milk. And you have to keep it in warm temperature, means around 30 degrees. 30 degrees is considered to be the optimum. And what's the benefit of spoiling the milk? Okay, coagulation is actually spoiling the milk. But presence of this bacteria increases vitamin B12. So yogurt is rich in vitamin B12. And when you drink the yogurt, it helps in maintaining the microbes in your intestine. And healthy microbes in the intestine is essential to prevent diseases, right? So this is one household 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 product from bacteria or microorganism. Okay, what's the name of the bacteria? Lactic acid bacteria. That's a second microbe. Okay, this microbe is known as the yeast. Yeast is a fungus, one-celled fungus. A fungus made up of one cell. What's the scientific name? This is called Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Okay, that's the name of the the fungus, right? And when you make a dough, how do you prepare a dough? In the wheat flour, you mix water and yeast. You can buy yeast in the supermarket, right? Granules of yeast. And where do you put water? So that enzymes of the yeast become active. And keep it in warm condition, fermentation happens. What is fermentation? Anaerobic respiration happens, and the yeast start producing carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide fills up the dough. The dough gets filled up with carbon dioxide. So after around 45 minutes, what happens to dough? Dough rises. Why the dough rises? The carbon dioxide, which is trapped inside, increases and apply pressure. This causes the dough to rise, right? So uh, this is another example for the product of microorganism. Okay, in India we have in southern states you find idli and dosha. So its dough is fermented, its batter is actually fermented overnight. This fermentation generates a lot of carbon dioxide. Okay, it's again done by the yeast. And this is another product of microbes in our household. And this is a drink known as the toddy. Toddy is obtained from palm tree, mainly coconut trees. They obtain this drink from coconut tree, right? They force the tree sap. Tree sap means the liquid inside the phloem to ferment on the tree itself, right? And after fermentation, they collect it in pots. And this fermented drink is known as a traditional drink in southern India. And it's a product of palm tree. It's a fermented drink. You can see the bubbles, which are carbon dioxide bubbles. Okay. And in other countries, they use many microbial product. Okay. So this is a kind of fermented fish, which is used, they keep the fish inside the airtight containers for many days. The fish get fermented and it gets a typical flavor, right? In countries like Thailand, Vietnam, they prepare fermented fish. Okay, that's another example. Cheese. Cheese is another, it's one of the oldest food item in which the humans use the microbes. There are different varieties of the cheese. When you go to the supermarket, you can see every country has its own cheese. Okay, even India has our cheese. Our cheese is not like the cheese
Paneer, right?
yeah, we buy from other countries. It's not fermented actually, right? It's called paneer, right? Paneer is considered to be the cottage cheese of India. Okay, so look at this. This is a Swiss cheese. In Swiss cheese, you find large holes. And why these holes? It's production of carbon dioxide by a specific bacteria. Okay, it's called Propionibacterium. What is it? Propionibacterium shermani. Okay, that's the name of the bacteria. You have to learn these names of the bacteria. And there are some of the cheese varieties which on which fungus grows. Okay, look at this one. This is called Roquefort cheese. It's one of the best cheese. It's loved by the cheese lovers, right? And you can see the fungus. The dark patches are fungus growing. They put this fungus in a specific place where the fungus grows. The fungus grows on the surface of the cheese, and that's what give it a typical flavor. So when you eat it for the first time, you may not like it. After 2 or 3 attempts, you start loving the taste. Okay, so that's another household product produced using the fungus or a microbe. Okay,
Sir, one thing.
pardon?
Yeah, is there something called blue cheese?
Yeah, blue cheese. Blue cheese again, made from fungus. I think it's a French cheese. Blue cheese has a different bacteria. I mean, different fungus, not bacteria. Okay, have you tried blue cheese?
No, I was just asking if what kind it was, if whether it was made of bacteria or not.
Yeah, no, not bacteria. Blue cheese is
Fungi.
fungi. And if you try it for the first time, it smells disgusting. Okay, I tried it. And it's actually the penicillium which grows in blue cheese. Blue cheese has penicillium, and this gives it a typical stinking flavor. But you need to eat it for several times to get used to the flavor. Once you get used to the flavor, you will never give up. They call blue cheese the king of cheese. Okay. Yeah. Look at the next one. These are fermented beverages. There are many drinks which are produced by fermentation. For example, beer. It's fermented beverage. Wine. Okay. And all of them use yeast. But there are beverages which are not fermented, like whiskey, brandy. These are not fermented ones, right? But they're basically produced using yeast, right? And what do they use? Which organism? It's a fungus. It's called Saccharomyces cerevisiae. And we also use it for making bread, right? And there's another name for this. It's called brewer's yeast because they use it for brewing the beverages. And how do they make the beer? Beer is made from malt. What's a malt? Malt is, you know, produced after germinating seeds. They mostly cereals like barley. What do? They soak them in water, allow them to sprout. Once they sprout, they dry it and they powder it. After powdering, they mix it with water. This is called malt. So malt is a solution of the germinated barley seeds. The most commonly used cereal is barley because it's not consumed as food in most of the countries. They don't use wheat and rice because it's used in the form of food, right? And barley is allowed to sprout. Then they dry it up in huge dryers, and then they powder it and mix with water. It's actually a starch solution with enzymes and everything. This is called malt. And in the malt, they put yeast. And what do you get is known as beer. How do they make wine? For the wine, they mostly use grape juice. But you can make wine from any fruit juice. Take any fruit juice, not necessarily grape, and add yeast in this, put it in optimum temperature, you get wine. But why do they use grape? Grape has high content of sugar. That's the reason they use the grape. But you can use any other type of fruit juice, right? And those are the two fermented beverages. And fermented beverages, they might use malt, they might use fruit juice, okay, and mix it with yeast. Right? This is mixed with yeast, and that's kept at optimum temperature, maybe 35 degree, for example, between 35 and 40, not more than that. And what happens in uh, these two mixes? In both cases, the yeast will produce ethanol and carbon dioxide. Even here, it will produce ethanol and the carbon dioxide. And what do you get when you do the uh, fermentation of the malt? You get beer. And here you get wine. So basically, chemically, they both contains the same thing. But what gives them different taste? The flavors of the malt and fruit juice. That what make them different, right? So these are known as fermented beverages. What is fermentation? As I told you, fermentation means anaerobic respiration. During anaerobic respiration, carbon dioxide and ethanol are produced. That's the reason they call this fermented beverages. Okay, these are the two fermented beverages we need to know. But there are other things like even champagne. Champagne is also a fermented beverage. Okay. What is antibiotic? Antibiotics are produced by microorganisms, right? It's usually produced by the bacteria. These are chemical substances produced by bacteria. And some of the antibiotics are produced by the fungus too. What's the basic purpose of this? This is antibiotics kill other microbes. So there is competition between microbes for food. So in the competition, they use this toxic chemical, right? This is actually toxic for the bacteria. And this toxic chemical prevents the growth of other microorganisms. Okay, that's why anti means against. Bio means what? Bio means life. Okay, it's against life of microorganisms. But these microbes, like bacteria, are killed, but it doesn't kill human cells. So it's not against our life, it's against the life of other bacteria, disease causing organism. Okay. And what's the first antibiotic discovered? This is called penicillin. Penicillin was discovered by Alexander Fleming. Alexander Fleming is a scientist who uh, discovered the first antibiotic. Okay, so it was a weekend, like Friday evening, and he had many petri dishes containing a bacteria known as Staphylococcus. Right, too many petri dishes with the bacteria. Right, and this was like his experiment was completed. So what he did, he left these petri dishes for washing in the wash basin. Laboratories have wash basin because that part of experiment was over. And what's the name of bacteria? Staphylococcus. That's the name of the bacteria. And or cocci, right? Cocci is a plural. Staphylococci bacteria was growing in these. It's discarded, finished. He left it unwashed, and he came back after 2 days, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. He came back to the laboratory. Then he accidentally looked at the petri dishes. He couldn't see any bacteria on this. Instead, he found a fungus growing on that. So he was very curious. How come fungus grows on the petri dish? So he took the petri dish back from the wash basin and started studying under the microscope about the bacteria as well as the fungus growing on that. And he found out that the fungus was penicillium. And he also couldn't found any bacteria. He found out that all the bacteria which were on the petri dish died. They all died. Okay. Then what happened? He found out that the fungus penicillium released a chemical known as penicillin. And this chemical killed every bacteria on it. Okay. So this is how penicillin was found by Alexander Fleming. But it became a very effective antibiotic much later during the World War. Okay, it became a very effective tool against a bacteria. And there are two scientists. One is called Ernest Chain, okay, and Howard Florey. Two scientists, Ernest Chain and Howard Florey, they started working on it, and they started using it in on American soldiers wounded in the Second World War. Okay, and Fleming, along with Fleming, Chain, and Florey, all the three were given Nobel Prize of 1945 for this amazing work. Okay, so three people were given: Alexander Fleming, the one who discovered penicillin, and these two scientists turned it into an effective tool against bacteria. Okay, and uh, after antibiotics, many new antibiotics were discovered. Okay, and so with this we can control all bacterial diseases. You know, hope you remember some of the bacterial disease, like plague is a bacterial disease. Whooping cough. Whooping cough is a bacterial disease. Okay, and diphtheria, another bacterial disease. Leprosy. Today we could control all this because of antibiotic. Imagine there's no antibiotic, the bacteria will kill us like the coronavirus killed humans. Okay, so this is called antibiotic. All right, and microbes also produce many uh, useful chemicals, enzymes, and bioactive molecules. But let's look at some of these examples. The first one is Aspergillus niger. Aspergillus niger is a fungus. And what does it produce? It produces citric acid. You know, citric acid you can buy in crystal form. This citric acid is basically produced with the help of fungus. Okay. And that's Acetobacter aceti. From the name itself, we can figure out this is the bacteria that produces acetic acid. You know, commonly we call the acetic acid vinegar. It's used in pickles. In India, we use it for preparing pickles. Okay. And that's a bacteria. This is a fungus, remember. This is a bacteria. And the next one is a bacterium too, Clostridium butylicum. It's a bacteria. And the name comes from the substance produced by bacteria. It's called butyric acid. Right? It's an industrial compound. Right? Most of these chemicals can be produced by growing bacteria. How about the lactobacillus? The one in curd, yogurt. And what's the name of this?
Lactic acid.
Lactic acid. Okay, this is known as lactic acid. So these are some of the organic acids produced by bacteria and fungus. Okay, acid producer. These are acid producers, right? And what does Saccharomyces cerevisiae? This is a fungus. It produces another compound, ethanol. What is ethanol? Ethanol is an alcohol. Okay, then you can see the streptococcus. Okay, and using the streptococcus, they modify the streptococcus genetically and help to produce clot dissolving chemicals. Okay, with the help of this, they produce clot dissolving chemicals. So clot clot bluster. What's a clot? It's a blood clot. People get blood
So
clot.
it produces this enzyme called streptokinase.
Yeah. Okay. And what happens here? The clot is made up of like fibrin, fibrin fibers. It's in the brain.
Yeah, it is destroyed. Blood vessels
And how the clot is formed when the blood vessels burst, right? Or if there is any kind of uh,
cut on the skin.
cholesterol deposition inside. Okay, that's the time clot appears due to high pressure. Some people get clot in the brain, and you cannot remove this clot. So what they do, uh, this chemical, the name of the chemical, it's an enzyme. It's called streptokinase. Name of the enzyme is streptokinase. It's an enzyme. This enzyme digests the clot, break it down, dissolve it. Okay, and clots are also formed inside the coronary artery during heart attack. What do you call the heart attack? Myocardial infarction means the heart attack, right? Myocardial infarction is when heart muscles don't get enough oxygen and glucose and it stops contracting and it leads to heart attack. One reason is formation of blood clot and cholesterol in the coronary artery. It can be dissolved using this chemical, streptokinase. Okay. This is another fungus, Trichoderma polysporum. Trichoderma polysporum produces a chemical called cyclosporin. What is it? Cyclosporin. Okay. Cyclosporin is called immunosuppressant drug. Immunosuppressant drug. What does that mean? Suppose a person has kidney transplant. Most of the time, they get kidney transplant from a person who with a matching blood type, right? But it's not his identical brother or sister, right? So what happens in the person's body? The kidney is being attacked by white blood cells, immune system attack, and it wrongly mistaken this organ for a bacteria. And the doctors give this drug, cyclosporin, to the person who got a kidney transplant. And what the cyclosporin does, it stops the immune system from attacking the kidney, right? And kidney is protected. But what's the disadvantage? It will cause weak immunity. The person get weak immunity, so he has to be very careful in going out, exposing themselves to any kind of infections outside. Okay, this is called cyclosporin. It's an immunosuppressant. Immune system is slowed down by the drug so that the transplanted organ can be protected. Okay. Next one is again a fungus. Uh, it's a yeast, specifically speaking, yeast, right? But the other yeast is Saccharomyces. This is a different yeast. This is called Monascus purpureus. Monascus purpureus produce a chemical called statin. Statin is one of the most widely drugged, right? And what does it do? It stops an enzyme which is responsible for the production of cholesterol. So it's a cholesterol lowering drug. Okay, most people above the age of 40 take it today. How? Why do they take it? Because they keep eating too much of fats, especially fat from animals. When you eat too much of fats from the animals, you get high cholesterol. When you have high cholesterol, you need to take this. Okay, if you don't eat the meat, you can reduce your cholesterol. But they love the meat, and as they love the meat, they keep eating meat and keep taking the drug. So this is called statin. All right. What does statin do? It inhibits an enzyme which help in the formation of cholesterol. So these are the chemicals produced from microbes. Okay. That's the next part where microorganisms are actively involved. Okay. So let's understand what exactly is the sewage. It's In India, you can see open sewages. The wastewater you find there, black in color or brown in color, it's smelly. And what is its? It's a composition. You also call it municipal wastewater. Okay, it's called sewage, and it has human feces. It has decomposing food from the kitchen. It has plenty of fungi. It has many bacteria. Okay, this is the composition of sewage. Right, sewage is produced in our homes, and from every home it goes to the drainage pipes. And where do they throw it? They dump it in the rivers or even in the ocean without any treatment, and that will cause water pollution. It causes water pollution. Color of the water changes. It will lead to the spread of waterborne diseases. Okay, and in this polluted water, insects, houseflies, they breed and they spread diseases. So what we are going to study here is how to treat the wastewater. The wastewater is treated in two different stages. Okay, two steps. The first step is called primary treatment, and the second step is called secondary treatment or biological treatment, right? And in these steps, what exactly we do? We use the bacteria in the water itself to clean up the water. So, what are the two steps of sewage treatment? Primary treatment, and second is secondary treatment, which is biological treatment. Okay, look at the primary treatment. What exactly is the primary treatment? Okay, let's say that's a sewage. This is that's a sewage, right? And what do you find in this? Plenty of bacteria, fungi, decomposing food, and human waste, right? This might also contain large and small particles, right? Like it might contain grit. Grit means sand. It might contain plastic. You might find contain glass, right? All these should be removed. So it undergoes filtration first. The sewage is filtered and it's allowed to sediment. The second step is called sedimentation, right? And uh, the let's say this is the sewage. In the beginning, you find some of these waste, like plastic, floats on the surface. These are floating. These are the floating debris. Floating debris means it could be plastic, lighter things, mostly plastic. And this is removed by sequential filtration. Means what? It keeps going from one stage to the other until all these floating things are removed. The next step is removal of grit and soil. Grit means the sand and the fine soil. Grit and soil, even the small pebbles, are removed by sedimentation. What is sedimentation? The water is allowed to stay here for maybe 1 month, and all the solid particles settle down on their own due to gravity. This is called sedimentation. Okay? And all the solids that settle at the bottom in the primary treatment is known as the primary sludge. What is it? The primary sludge. And the clear water on the top is supernatant. And they call this effluent. Okay, what is it? Effluent. And the effluent from the primary tank, this is the primary treatment tank. And that's what's taken to the secondary treatment tank. Okay, one more time. Sewage treatment happens in two stages. What's the first one? Primary treatment. Second one, secondary treatment. And here we discuss about primary treatment. During primary treatment, they physically remove the floating plastic grit, sand, and glass. And the first step of primary treatment is filtration. Means in filtration, the filtration is called sequential filtration. It goes like a step-by-step filtration. In this sequential filtration, what's happening to the plastic and all these things, they are getting filtered out. They all get, everything get filtered out. And after that, the water is allowed to stay in the tank. What's the name of the tank? Primary treatment tank. Okay, now the tank has a name. Primary treatment tank. And in the next step, sedimentation happens. What is sedimentation? You don't have to do anything. Just allow the water to stay in the tank. Don't disturb the water. All the solids settle down. Once they settle down, whatever you get, okay, maybe the feces and everything, this is called the primary sludge. So what do you find in primary sludge? They settle down solid particles. Okay, this is known as primary treatment. And the water which is on the top, a little more clear water, is called supernatant. Supernatant is sent for secondary treatment. Okay, look at the secondary treatment. What is the secondary treatment? And this is the primary, the water, sewage water coming after primary treatment. It enters a tank. And in this tank, they bubble air. They keep bubbling air through the tank, water in the tank. So this is called aeration. What's aeration? Bubbling of air through the tank. Why do they bubble air? Bubbling air means more oxygen can be dissolved. More oxygen is dissolved into the tank. And this is constantly mixed, okay, using using an impeller. They keep mixing it, continuously mixing it, so that the oxygen mixes with the water and oxygen help the fungus to grow. We want more fungus, right? And what's the body of the fungus? Fungus is known as hyphae. Hope you remember. The filament of the fungus is known as hyphae. So bubbling oxygen help in growth of more fungus. And as the fungus grows, it forms a mesh-like structure. Okay, a mesh-like structure in the water, right? And what happens to oxygen in the water? Most of the oxygen get consumed by the microbes. When number of microbes increases, the amount of oxygen consumed also increases. Okay, so this will reduce the biological oxygen demand. What's biological oxygen demand? Okay, the amount of oxygen required by the organisms is called biological oxygen demand. More organism means more demand. What's the name of the organism? Fungus. Why fungus is increasing? Because of decomposition, but here we are supplying oxygen. We want the fungus to grow faster. Okay, and if BOD of water is very low, I mean very high, high BOD means less oxygen. Okay, and what does it test? BOD test the rate of oxygen uptake by the fungus in water, and it is controlled by how much feces and organic matter you find in the water. Greater the BOD of water, it's highly polluted water. Remember, okay? Clean water has the low BOD. All right. And once by continuously bubbling, what they're trying to do, they're trying to reduce the BOD. By supplying extra oxygen, they're trying to reduce the biological oxygen demand. Once this is highly reduced, this water is sent to the next tank. And that's the next tank. Okay, it comes into the next tank, right? And we talked about In the previous time, we talked about the mycelium, fungal hyphae. This fungal hyphae start, getting tangled up inside, and they call this flocks. Okay, the fungal hyphae, which are growing here, turn into like bacteria and fungus together. Fungal filaments trap the bacteria. So phlox is made up of fungal filaments plus bacteria, entangled, everything combined together. Fungal filament and the bacteria together form phlox. We need the phlox so that water can be quickly cleaned. Remember, they are using the fungus and bacteria to clean up the water. It's like, they spoil the water, so let them clean up. Humans are only providing the right conditions, which help the bacteria and fungi to bacteria and fungi to increase in number and clean up the water. Okay, and this flux will settle down at the end. When it settles down at the end, this is called activated sludge. So, what is activated sludge? Activated sludge is fungal hyphae and the bacteria together. And this is transferred to the next tank. Why? Because the fungus and bacteria help it to clean the water. So we call this flock inoculum. You're inoculating the next tank with the flocks, fungus, and bacteria. Okay. And in the next step, the water goes to one second. There's a problem here. Okay. What's the next step? The remaining part of the sludge is pumped to anaerobic digesters. And here, many different kinds of bacteria, and they are in anaerobic situation, no oxygen. They digest everything. Okay, the bacteria and the fungi, everything is killed. During the digestion, gases are produced: methane, carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and they form biogas. Okay? That's the next one, anaerobic digestion. This is taken to anaerobic digestion, and uh, during anaerobic digestion, okay, what happens during anaerobic digestion? Gases are used to produce electricity in the plant itself, right? So this is known as the sewage treatment. They always ask this for as a long answer question for 5 marks. So make sure that you know this by heart, right? Hope it is clear. I think there's a problem with the PC. back. Hope you can hear me.